What's up, everybody? This is Kris Everett, and you're watching Dumb Girl Podcast. Tune in this Monday. See you then.
Welcome back to Dumb Girl Podcast. I am your host, Jessica Fury. Today we have such a great guest. I think you guys are going to really enjoy it. Kris Everett. He is an agent with the Bond Street partners of TheAgency. He was recognized this year as the top 30 of 30 agents. And what I love the most about Kris is he literally went from selling fried chicken, am I going to say it right? On a food truck,
yeah,
to making $100 million. Like, I think in itself, that's one of the reasons why I'm going to love this episode, because there's just so much and like appreciation and just like, Kris, like that's incredible.
Well,
welcome to the
you.
podcast. That's like incredible.
Thank you. What an intro, by the way, and thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So you came from London.
Yeah.
I want to hear the story of like, you came from London, you came to LA, your now wife, then girlfriend was living here, fiance?
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
And you wanted to live here.
Yeah. Well, it was more, so obviously my background grew up in the UK. I met her when I was studying in San Francisco back in 2015. And then it was like, right, we're long distance. She was like, I'm not going to England. It's too fucking cold there. So I was like, all right, I guess I'm jumping on a plane and moving to Long Beach at the time. So that's where I originally moved. And yeah, that was it pretty much, from there. Everything really began. So
you came to America, you had no money. Did you have 2,000, like how much money did you have when you came here?
I probably had, I just actually bought a property in the UK because I thought I was staying there. So pretty much most of my funds had gone into that, but I would say probably about maybe $10,000, in savings throughout the years. So I moved here with that, then quickly realized, California is expensive to live. And not only that, when you first move here, you have so many restrictions through your visa. So for example, I couldn't get a driving license. I couldn't drive. I wasn't really allowed to apply for certain jobs. I didn't have a social security number. I effectively didn't exist in the US system. So, in that situation when really you have no income and you're just living and paying rent and eating out and this and that, it went very, very quickly. So.
And then, so you had to look for a job and you were going to, where were you looking for jobs?
So pretty much in the end, I'd resorted to just walking up and down, 2nd Street in Long Beach. I don't know if you should go. If you haven't go, it's a great strip, lots of bars, restaurants and stuff. And I would just spend my days, I'd walk into the restaurants and bars and I'd ask them like, hey, can I work behind the bar? Can I wash dishes? Like, I'll do anything. I was like, I just want a job. I want to have a purpose here. I just want to do something, right? Because when I first moved here, you think it's going to be this whole glamorous, I'm living the California dream, right? But the reality is you move here and it's none of that, right? Like, you don't exist, you don't know anyone, right? The only person I knew was my fiance at the time, and she's out working 5 days a week. So really for me, it was just sitting around and like, there was probably a little bit of sense of depression there as well, right? Like missing my family. I just left my job in the UK. I left my friends, left my family. So I just wanted to do something, right, with myself. I didn't know what that was going to be. I just wanted to do something. So I would walk up and down the strip, and I would walk in. I would ask them, hey, look, can I work behind the bar? Can I wash dishes? Whatever it is. I just wanted to do something. And literally everywhere was just like, no. I got turned away from, I can't tell you how many places. And bearing in mind, I don't have a car either. I literally would go and I would walk for hours up and down into all these places, come back, blisters all on my feet, and just feel completely defeated at the end of the day because I'd achieved nothing again. But then, after just doing that for some time, I think I moved here in September, and then I was pretty much doing that through to beginning of December. And then in December, I walked onto a food truck, and I explained my situation. I said I was looking for work. They said, "Can you start tomorrow?" I was like, "Absolutely, done." And that was it. I stepped on the food truck the next day. They said, "Do you have experience battering chicken?" Which I absolutely did not. But of course I was like, yes, I've battered chicken before, which they quickly realized my first batch that came out terrible. I didn't. And yeah, that's it. So I started working on the food truck, and I actually enjoyed it, and I loved it.
What did you like about it?
I just enjoyed like doing something. It had been 3 months of kind of not really knowing if this was the right decision for me. It was, I was close to leaving and just going back home several times. In my mind, when I hit December, I was thinking I'm going to go home for Christmas and just stay and just not come back. But it was just a good vibe. It was something I'd never done before. It was like they had a big following on social media, and we would kind of pull up to breweries and they would blare like music out the speaker, and there'll be a line around the corner, and it was fast paced. It was just something for me to do, and something for me to feel a purpose, and for that I enjoyed it and had a great time with it.
What were those emotions that you were feeling during those times of rejection? Because you came here also because the qualities of a man, I'll just say like in a relationship, and the qualities of a man that a person that they're building for themselves is they want to be a provider for the person, for themselves, and they want to provide for their partner.
Yeah.
And when you're moving to a country, I mean, I moved from New Jersey, and not a similar story, but I did have no connections. I had no clients, no apartment to live in, no car. None of those things came with me. But did you have a sense of like, I'm failing? Like, what am I doing with myself? I don't have these skills, or like, what were some of the things that were coming up for you?
100%. I mean, look, I think it was for sure one of the more challenging times in my life, because you're right? I moved across the country and I had my fiance, and I'm like, I want to provide you with this wedding that you want. I want to have these dreams of this California lifestyle for us. But the reality was she's paying my way, right? Because I can't provide anything to the relationship right now. I'm just trying, but I can't. So yeah, it was a little bit depressing for me, and it was tough on me mentally for sure. And that's why, as I said, there were many moments where I literally was so close to just packing my bag and just going back home and just calling it a day. Thank God I didn't, but that's where my mind was going at the time for sure.
Yeah, I truly believe that in our, I don't want to say darkest moments, but in our darkest moments, the universe, a higher source, really comes through.
Yeah.
When you're like, I am so close to throwing in the towel,
yes,
something comes in, and
100%.
Doing a food truck. Was it fun? What are some qualities that you gain from working at a food truck? Because, I mean, that is not glamorous.
Sure. No, yeah, it was. I have this one. I'll tell you exactly an example of how my mindset was in that moment and what it taught me moving forward, and why I truly believe I'm here today because of that food truck. I remember my first week there. So it was 12-hour shifts. The food truck's at 100 degrees. You're dripping with sweat, right? It's greasy. It's, you're frying chicken, right? And at the end of the night, you get this little metal rod and you drain the fryer, right? Of a 12-hour day of frying in it, okay? And then at the end, when you're draining it, there's all this gunk at the bottom, and you have to get this stick and stick it in and rummage it around, and it's going all over you, and it's it looks horrible, it's just nasty. But I remember in that moment that when I was doing that, there was a part of me that started to go to a place why am I fucking doing this? And I started to doubt myself a little bit when I was doing it. And then something switched in my mind, and I literally said to myself, do you know what? Like, this is adding to your story. And I said to myself, like, you're going to do something great. And the fact you're here now only adds to your story and provides you with resilience and shows you how you're going to get there. And one day you're going to be able to sit here and talk back to that moment and explain that story and, you know, tell how it got you to where you are now. So that to me, like, sums up everything. For me, it was really telling myself when I'm in there that this adds to my story, which I know will be great. And I told myself that every day on the food truck. And that's why I enjoyed it, because I was like, this is my story. This is my path, and this is where I am right now. And that was it.
I admire that. I think, because sometimes, like, I'll get messages from people, and this is exactly what it'll say. And it's been like this for years from both industries, and they'll be like, wow, you know, like, you're such an inspiration, or wow, you're like killing it. And for myself, I don't publicly display, like, if I'm really going through something, because I like to go through that within myself. But you just, like, have to continually tell yourself, like, this is aligned with my purpose. This is aligned with my vision, or whatever it is that you are also telling yourself. And how long were you doing the food truck for right before you decided I'm going to transition into real estate?
Sure. So they kind of overlapped slightly. So the first few months when I was kind of figuring out what I wanted to do, this was in November, beginning of November, and one of my fiance's girlfriend's boyfriend at the time, who was also living with us, he just got his real estate license, and he was like, yeah, I'm going to work for this great team in the OC, and I was like, all right, cool, this is kind of interesting. And he would take me to the gym every morning. We'd drive to the gym in his car, and he had this podcast on with the agent of that brokerage, but also James Harris, who I now work for. And when I heard him speaking, I was like, oh shit. I was like, he's English. And my friend was like, yeah, bro, he's one of the, like, biggest agents in LA, like, crushes it. He's got a TV show. He sells 300, 400, $500 million houses, whatever it is. And in that moment, there was something that told me, I was just like, I need to reach out to this guy, because he was effectively telling his story about how he moved here with nothing and created this huge empire, right? And so there was something that really resonated because of what I was going through at the time. I heard him go through similar struggles, but look at where he is now. So something in my mind switched, like, okay, I know now it's possible. And if only I can, like, pick his brains and get hold of him and figure out how he did it, right? So I literally sent him an email that same day, introducing myself, saying I heard him on the podcast, and told him I'll do whatever it takes. I'll get your coffee in the morning. I'll get your dry cleaning. I'll work for free. I don't want payment. I just want to get my foot in the door and show you that I have what it takes. And didn't expect him to respond. And I remember, like, it's all day, no response. I sent the email at like 7:30 because I thought that was, like, optimal time to, like, reach him. And he responded at like 11:30 p.m. I saw it ding up on my laptop, James Harris. And I was like, oh shit, he's responded. And he sent me an email back and he said, hey Kris, welcome to LA, call me tomorrow. And I'm like, fuck, that's insane. So I call him the next day, and of course, James being James, with how busy he is, I call him and he's like, at lunch, sorry, it's not a good time. Call him again, no answer. So that's kind of where that situation started. And it probably, was about a month or so of calling him, harassing him, trying to get hold of him, until finally he invited me into the office. And then this is where it kind of overlaps. So at that time, I also then started working on the food truck. So I started working on the food truck. Then James invited me into the office, and I drove up from Long Beach to Beverly Hills, met him in exactly the same office where we are now. And just like this just sums up James and like how humble he is, given like his stature and where he is. He doesn't know who I am, have no experience, and he's like, yeah, do you want to go get lunch? And I'm like, sure, yeah. And he takes me in his car, we go to Sugarfish. I've never eaten sushi properly with chopsticks before, so I'm like trying to act like I know what I'm doing. And English people are not very cultured with food, by the way. I've realized that now. And yeah, and then he literally just took me around with all these appointments with him. Like, he took me in this house that was like, he was selling for like 20 million, and I just remember walking in, stood there, and like my skinny jeans ripped tight with my Vans, like, shit, this is insane. But I knew in that moment that's what I wanted to do. I walked into that house, I looked at the view, and I was like, this is me. This is what I'm gonna do. So that's really where that, start for wanting to get into real estate. That's where it came from rather. And then obviously I would go back home, and then I was working on the food truck at the same time.
So I want to just go back, and I want to share just like this one specific thing, because I know that somebody who's listening to this, they've done this, but they've stopped.
Mm-hmm.
They've done this. And we were talking about this the other day, when you reached out to James, you kept reaching out to him. And it's like, in real estate, they'll say like, a lot of the success comes in the follow-up game, but a lot of it also comes like that, moving past your own internal fear of, this person doesn't want to give me their time because they're already successful, they're already really busy, they're already doing the deals. But like, just in itself, that one example of like just not giving up just for even like 2 cents of this person's time.
Yeah.
And sometimes that is what it takes. Like,
right.
Constantly, like, were you just like calling? Were you sending like the same email? Did you constantly send the same email? Like, what was it like during that time? What were you doing?
So yeah, it was very much, I'd call him, he'd say it's not a great time, call me back. And then, the next day I would call him again, like, day after day after day. And then he would call me back. I'd be sleeping. He'd call me and leave me a voicemail at like 11:30. I'd wake up like, fuck, I missed him. And it was just, it was very much just kind of back and forth. Over and over. And then actually I think there was actually one point where he sent me an email. I know he did. So they actually told me no at first. I just remembered that. So I was calling saying I want to come work. He was like, look, I really want to help you, let me speak to the team. And then I remember I got an email from him with the team copied saying, Kris, like, we'd really love to help you, we just don't have time right now, I'm so sorry. And I was like, shit, okay, so they basically told me no. And then, from that point, I didn't give up. I continued to kind of stay top of mind. I continued to call him, check in on him, ask him questions about, what should I do here? When he took me around Beverly Hills, he's like, it was a Tuesday. He was like, you should come just walk the inventory during brokers opens. So I would drive up, I'd walk into the Beverly Hills office, I'd pretend I was an agent there, I'd take one of the MLS magazines, get back in my car, pick the ones that look cool, and I would drive around, and then I would walk into the open houses and say I work at the agency with James and David, and then just pretend that I was like already in that position, and then I'd be posting it everywhere, like, just really trying to like show James like I have what it takes, and always make sure that like I'm here and I'm top of mind. So it was really just that over and over and over, all the way through. So this started in November, and that was all the way through until June. So what is that, like 8-9 months or something? And at that point, I got my license, passed the exam, called him, and I basically started working for him right away from that point. So yeah, it's nuts to think about.
I love that. Like, I can stop the episode and just cut up so many things for people to just gain so much like inspiration from. Like, when I originally started the podcast several years ago, I had another podcast, and I only did like 5 episodes because I wanted to, I didn't have any guests. So I stopped, and then I restarted it again prior to being with the agency. And then I took some time off when I got my license, because one of the things that I didn't know and I didn't get the memo is that this is an exceptionally expensive business to
Yeah.
like that's the one of the things that a lot of people don't realize. They get a license and they don't realize that it is thousands, not hundreds of dollars. It's
Yeah.
thousands of dollars to hold a license in real estate in
Yeah.
whichever state, in whatever state. And the other
Yeah.
thing is the grind.
Mm-hmm.
The grind. Like it is a grind. And I want to ask you about that in a second because you did that's 100 million.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big number.
Yeah.
But when I got with the agency, it put me back into a space of doing the podcast, of carrying a message of overcoming adversity and overcoming it from either this internal thing that we do where it's like we have to like overcome our fears, insecurities, and every other thing that we just self-sabotage with. The other thing is the relationships that we create with people, which is the one that you've created now with James and David.
Yeah.
And the business in itself, and now just even starting with the business in itself, you know, like it is a grind. It really is, like
Yeah.
between the cold calling and you know and courting, get you know, people out to lunch and dinner and this and this and this, and what are some of the things that really started to work for you, that you just a spark started to go
Sure.
in your business? What were some of those things?
Yeah. So, I mean, no, I think, like for any agent, when they get started, it takes 6 months to a year until you kind of get in your groove and figure out like what your sell is, right? Like what is it exactly that you're good at? And for me, when I first started, I remember I started with them as an assistant, obviously, for some time. And then after my first year, they then gave me the opportunity to be an agent, right? After I was nagging them for 6 months saying, I'm ready. And they're like, you know what? They called me and they're like, I'm going to give you a shot. And for me, the first thing that came to mind was, right, pick up your phone and just call everyone you've ever met at an open house, at, a showing, whatever it is, call everyone. And I picked up my phone, I remember, got hold of a client. And, she was like, I have an agent, but they've not really been able to find me anything. And I was like, well, look, if I bring you something off market, or pre-market, will you let me represent you? And she's like, yes. And then literally a week later, showed her a place, closed on it in 2 weeks. So that happened, right? And I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, this is fucking easy. I'm like, why is everyone struggling? I'm like, this is the easiest business ever. Like, I'm 2 weeks in, I've just closed my first deal, right? And then all of a sudden that closes. Then I'm like, right, what next? I'm doing the same over and over and over again. 1 month goes by, 2 months goes by, 3 months goes by, nothing. So I'm like, okay, I was naive to think that that's actually the reality, right? So then I had to kind of switch up, like, right, I can't just be sitting around calling people in my database. I need to go out and find business. So from there, I tried door knocking. I did door knocking a lot because that's ultimately what James and David did to grow their business. They door knocked all the big houses in Bel Air that everyone was too scared to do, and they got the tear downs and they sold them to developers. And then 6 years later, the developer finishes building and they sell it for 40 million. And that's literally what they did. So I did that for a while. I did door knocking. I tried cold calling. I really was just kind of trying a bit of everything until I figured out what I enjoyed to do. Not just what I enjoyed to do, but what I was good at and what actually got business for me. And it turned out, after doing everything, that for me, what I closed the most business from and what kind of worked best for me in terms of longevity and kind of the whole, cycle, was open houses. So I just was good at sitting open houses. I didn't sit around on my phone. I made sure I got everyone's information that came in. I spoke to everyone, walked them through the house, figured out what their situation was, if they're working with an agent, if they liked the house. If they didn't, maybe I have something else I can show them, right? I had a spreadsheet in my laptop of off markets that I would collect from agents when they posted them online. And then I would literally get my laptop out and say, you don't like this house? Look what I have here. Would you be interested if I send you some of these off market things for you to look up? Because at the time, that was when the market was crazy, right? This was 2021 summer. So the market was nuts. Everyone turns around. Absolutely. Here's my email. Here's my phone number. Send me whatever you have. Right now I have a buyer from an open house. I'm sending them off markets. And that's what I did. Because I didn't have the connections. I didn't have the rapport. And I just would bring people opportunities that weren't available to the general public. I would close the buyer. From closing the buyer, I would then get a listing from the sale. I would leverage that, send out postcards, knock on doors. Hey, I sold this. Have another buyer looking in the area. Would you entertain selling? And that was it. That's really what I did. It's what I honed in on. It's what I still do to this day. And I just repeat the cycle over and over and over again. And that's not to say that works for everyone. That's just something that works really well for me. And that's why I'm saying I think it's super important for everyone to try a bit of everything and then hone in on what they're good at and what works well for them.
Yeah, well, consistency wins.
With consistency, exactly,
being consistent. You were so fearless. Like, you didn't have like this fear of, like, the first time I door knocked, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, I know.
Door knocking. I'm selling like Girl Scout cookies, like knocking on the door, like asking, like,
yeah.
I'm like door knocking. And a couple of the people I am in, mostly are in my community. I met them and I connected with them and I reach out to them every once in a while. I send people handwritten letters.
Yeah.
So the people that I met and we like connected and they invited me into their homes, I just sent them and because we're both with the agency has personalized cards. So I just sent like handwritten cards. I'll send like, it's great to meet you. If there's anything that you need, but did you overcome fear? Have you always been some sense of being fearless? Because a lot of people, this is my own assumption that because they're not established, they have this fear of like, now I have to sell myself either door knocking. I find equally as what you said, like open houses are very easy because you could just study the area. The more you know, the more you can share with the person.
100%. I mean, look, I think there's two parts to that. The first part for me, which is something that most people might see as a disadvantage, is that I had no experience and I didn't know who anyone was. So although that some people might perceive that as a disadvantage, in my mind, I perceived it as an advantage because I had nothing to lose. I didn't know if I knocked the door of freaking I knew who Brad Pitt was, but let's just say another celebrity who's, big. I wasn't really big into the celebrity. I'm from a tiny little town in the UK. I wasn't scared. I didn't have the fear because I had nothing to lose and I didn't know who anyone was. So if someone famous answered the door, I'd just be like, hey, yeah, how's it going? Like, I don't really know who you are, so I'm just going to talk to you normally. So I didn't have that in my head, which I think is a barrier for a lot of people that they struggle to overcome, is they have this sense of like imposter syndrome, right? Like, I don't belong here in this space with this $50 million house with this whoever owns it, right? And I didn't have that because I didn't know anyone. I just didn't know anyone. So for me, I had that aspect to it, which benefited me. But then I also had, James as a mentor, and James was always in my ear. And I remember he would always say this. He'd always say, fear is false evidence appearing real. And over and over, he would say it every week, false evidence appearing real. Like, it's not real. Like, you're in your head about it. It's not real. Go out, knock on the door, do it. So I had both of those aspects combined, just really helped me be fearless in just going for it because I had nothing to lose. I'm on one of the best teams in the country. And I've got James in my ear, false evidence appearing real, over and over again. And that's really, what allowed me to just go out and do that.
Mm-hmm. I haven't heard that from James, but I've heard that from,
it's a great analogy.
It is a great analogy, and I think that I would agree with you with this willing to do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
It is. I would say I'm willing to do whatever it takes. It's just because that's the type of business that it is. And I think that James and David are such an exceptional example because, and I would love for you to share, like, what is the most unglamorous thing about being in the real estate business versus the most glamorous thing without using the price point of the house?
Without using the price point, the most unglamorous thing. I mean, you know, probably I would say maybe it's not. I mean, you know, for example, a couple weeks back, right, we had a listing deep in the canyon, no service. The house isn't really that great. Probably not going to sell. No furniture, no Wi-Fi, nothing. Empty house in a dark canyon. And you got to go sit that open house for 3 hours on your Sunday, and you're probably going to be hungover. That I would say is like, you know, you have to go and do those things. You know, yeah, you post all your sales and your nice properties and stuff, but in reality, I'm sat on a Sunday, hungover for 3 hours with no service, no furniture, in the dark. One person maybe comes through the door. There's a neighbor. But that's their business, right? If you're not there, then there's no opportunity. So that I would say is an example of like an unglamorous side to the real estate game. In terms of the glamorous, you know, having access to the listings that we have at the agency. I mean, just being able to go to the preview twilight events, right, at like a $80 million house and stand there at the pool and look at the view and just think like, this is absolutely nuts, right? And of course, that's what you post on your social media. You don't post your dark, deep open house in the canyon, right? So I would say, you know, two completely different things. But the funny thing is, like, the $80 million house you go to at the preview, like, that's not your listing, but you're posting it on Instagram. What you're actually doing is sitting in the open house. But, you know, that's your reality more than that is, but that's kind of your mindset and where you want to go. So yeah.
I think you and I were talking about this the other day, that there is more than enough to go around.
Yeah.
I actually like giving credit to an other agent's listing or posting because I kind of look at it this way. If they share it onto their story, it's just putting my own business out there.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a great thing that, like, from the moment that the agency has opened up a lot of doors for me. I was with AKG before that, and that opened the agency door, but the agency opened up so many doors because it connected me to so many like incredible agents.
Yeah.
And so many incredible agents that are just open and willing to be like, yeah, like this is what I had to do, and this is what it took. And I think that you shared even so much of that on like here, like even sharing that. But there is something that brings so much value to business, and that's like the well-being, like your well-being. And I know that you have such a wellness routine that you do on a day-to-day basis. Can you share what that is and how it's actually helped you with your sales and your business?
Yeah, 100%. You know, I come from a sporting background. I used to run track and field and cross country, and that sport is really 90% mental and 10% ability. And so coming from that background and transitioning into real estate, you know, I already quickly realized that how you start your day is typically how your day is going to go, right? So I'm always thinking like, how can I set myself up for success today? And for me, that, you know, it's different for everyone, but for me it would always comprise of, you know, going to the gym in the morning. I like to get up early. I don't think that everyone has to get up early. For me, that's just what works for me. I find that having the quiet time in the morning, you know, with my coffee, and it's like dark outside still, there's something about that I like. So, you know, I'll get up early, typically like maybe 6:30, go to the gym, work out. Come back, have some breakfast, do some stretching, a little bit of meditation. I just use like a little guided meditation on Apple Music, put my headphones in, 5-10 minutes. And then I always try to practice a little bit of gratitude as well. So I've got like a little journal where I'll just literally, I'll just write 3 things that morning that I'm grateful for, just to kind of set my mind in the right way. And that's it. And then, by 8 a.m. I've done all of that. I'm feeling inspired. I'm awake. I'm flexible. I'm feeling good. And then I'm ready to go out and attack, the day and whatever's, ahead of me.
I love that. What would be a gem that you can share to someone who would either be struggling with bringing in an income, or struggling to make it in the real estate business, or a new agent, or maybe just wanting to feel better about themselves as a whole? Like, what would be something that you have so many tools that have really helped you from the time that you started coming into America, starting this business. What is something that you would actually share with someone?
Sure. So I think, I think more, I guess more, more morning. You mean it's in something specifically from my routine, or just just advice like in general?
Like I share with people like what I'm doing in my business and what's been going on. And a lot of it is like, just being consistent. I came into the business during a slow time. So, and I know that you were saying like, you're setting yourself up for when it does open up. But I think it's like hearing that positivity and that reinforcement where it's like, do what you're doing, like it's going to stick. So things like that really helps me.
Right.
So what is something that you would share with somebody who may be going through like a hard time?
Sure. Yeah, I think this is what works well for me, especially in the market that everyone's in at the moment. That is tough. It's the reality. It is a hard market. For me, it's having faith and trust in that there is a path already set for you. So like for me, when I'm having a bad day or I'm struggling and I'm just, nothing's clicking, nothing's working, I bring myself back to the mental state of, okay, look, like this is where you are right now. I accept this is where I am right now. And I just have faith and trust that I know that there is a path set for me, and this is just where I am on the path, and that's okay. That's fine. So it gives me kind of like, it settles me almost and allows me to accept the negative situation that I'm in and understand that something good is around the corner. I just have to trust that the path is there, the path is set, and that's it. And that really has been huge for me in this market. And I think, everyone has their own versions of that, and whatever it is, whether it's religion or just believing in a higher power or whatever it is, there's just something settling about believing in that for yourself. And it really helps you get through the tough times.
I think that's great. I think that just like I can run that as a reel literally, and it would be such a positive for people to hear that. People don't hear those things on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
And I'm so grateful that you came here just to share that. It means so much to me, and also to the people that tune into the podcast. I ask 3 questions to all my guests before that they leave me, unless they want to come back. What is a non-negotiable in your morning routine that sets you up for the day?
Non-negotiable is where I have to do some form of a workout. I cannot not work out in the morning.
I agree with you. Can you leave the listeners with one piece of advice or suggestion that they can apply to their daily routine, their business, and or relationship?
Sure. Daily routine, I would say, take something from what I said in the morning routine and try it, implement it in the mornings. In terms of business, I would say have patience and have trust. Know that as long as you're doing what you need to be doing, that results will come. There is no one in the history of history who has been successful like that, right? Like they're just doing what they need to do every day, and then bang, it comes. And then relationships, just be a nice person. Just be good to people. Like, I don't know. Don't be an arsehole.
Rule number one.
Rule number one, yeah.
You're the only person who's answered all three. Usually people just give me one.
Oh, I would have said one if I didn't realize.
It's all good. What are 3 qualities of yourself that peers would say about you?
I would say I'm always positive. I'd always find something positive out of any situation. Doesn't matter how bad it is, I will pull something that's positive and I'll cling on to that. Patience. I've been told I have the patience of a saint with clients who run circles around me, and most agents would tell them to F off. I would take the shit. I'll take the shit all day long and just be patient with it and know that something will come out of it eventually. Positive, patient. Let's see. What can I say? Another. I've blanked. It's too good. I said 3 on the last one.
You're tenacious.
I'm tenacious. Tenacity. There we go. Yes.
You will not give up until you get what you want.
Yeah, exactly. Tenacity. That's a good one.
And I think that you surround yourself with like-minded people, and I would probably say that's one of the reasons why James loves having you around, because I mean, every time around him, he's in a good space, and 100%. I really love that. Like, I love that.
Yeah.
I think it's like amazing. Kris, thank you so much. Where can people find you? Plug yourself.
Sure. It's just Kris Everett, Kris Everett on Instagram. That's it. That's pretty much everywhere I am.
And he's with the Bond Street Partners. You guys can follow me at Jessica J. Fury, at Jessica Fury Real Estate, and follow the podcast at Dumb Girl Podcast. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks, Kris.
Thank you, guys.